I've photographed more than 300 weddings in my career, and I thought I'd seen it all. Anxious grooms, demanding brides, family disputes, last-minute crises. But I had never experienced a moment where my camera uncovered a truth so unsettling that it forced me to question love, choice, and even my own professional responsibility. The wedding of Victoria Reed and Peter Russell was meant to be the highlight of my career, a high society celebration that would secure my place among elite wedding photographers. Instead, it became the day I realized that sometimes the most powerful image you capture is the one that stops a wedding from moving forward. Before I begin, I'd love to know, where are you watching this from? Share it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories about the extraordinary courage hidden in ordinary moments. Now, let me take you back to that flawless spring morning when I learned that even the most beautiful weddings can conceal the darkest secrets. My name is Ross Bailey, and I've been a wedding photographer for 8 years. I entered the profession almost by chance. I had been freelancing as a photojournalist, barely managing to get by, when a friend asked me to shoot her wedding. That day I discovered I had a talent for capturing the intimate moments that define each ceremony: the nervous laugh of a groom seeing his bride, a father's tears as he walks his daughter down the aisle, the joy on a couple's faces as they're declared husband and wife. What began as a favor turned into a passion. Wedding photography became more than just a livelihood. It was a way of celebrating love in all its forms. Over the years, I've captured ceremonies on beaches, in barns, grand cathedrals, and simple backyards. Each one taught me something about the many ways people commit their lives to one another. But the Reed-Russell wedding was unlike any I had ever encountered. When Victoria Reed's assistant called to book me, she made it clear this event wasn't just about two people getting married. It was a union between two of the state's most prominent families, an affair destined for magazine spreads and attended by politicians, business elites, and old money aristocrats. "Mr. Bailey," her assistant said in a crisp professional tone, "Miss Reed has reviewed your portfolio and wishes to hire you for her wedding on May 15th. The budget is unlimited, and we expect nothing short of perfection." The venue was the Reed family estate, a vast mansion passed down through 4 generations. When I arrived for the consultation, the extravagance was striking. Gardens that looked like they belonged in a storybook, a ballroom large enough for 500 guests, and staff that rivaled a luxury hotel. Victoria herself embodied the image of a society bride. At 26, she was strikingly beautiful, with the composure that comes from years of private schooling and charitable galas. During our meeting, she was polite, answering my questions about the schedule and her vision for the photos. Yet there was a distance in her manner, as if she were simply fulfilling an obligation rather than preparing for the happiest day of her life. I asked her the question I always asked: "Brides, what's most important to you in the photography?" Normally, brides would light up, eager to describe the emotions they wanted preserved. Victoria's reply was measured: "My father wants comprehensive documentation of the event, every guest, every detail. This wedding is the union of two important families, and the photographs must reflect that significance." Her answer was unusual, almost clinical, as though she were describing a business transaction rather than her own marriage. I pressed gently, "And what matters most to you personally?" For a moment her expression shifted, something vulnerable, a flicker of longing, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. "I want whatever my father thinks is best," she said at last. The groom, Peter Russell, looked every bit the part of a high society match, tall, conventionally handsome, and carrying the easy confidence of someone who had never questioned his place in the world. He was cordial enough, though I couldn't help but notice the lack of warmth between him and Victoria. Their interactions felt more like those of business partners than of a couple in love. "Ross comes highly recommended," Peter remarked to Victoria, as though I weren't sitting there. "His work from the Whitmore wedding was featured in Town and Country, "That's wonderful," Victoria replied, though her distracted tone made it clear her mind was elsewhere. I left that meeting uneasy. After years of experience, I had developed an instinct for couples. I could usually tell whether I was witnessing a love story or a looming disaster. But this wedding didn't feel like either. It felt staged, and poorly at that. The wedding day arrived with perfect weather, clear skies, a soft breeze, the kind of day photographers hope for. I reached the Reed estate at 7 a.m. to capture the preparation process, starting in the bridal suite. The room was buzzing with activity. Stylists, makeup artists, bridesmaids, in matching robes, and enough flowers to fill a shop. At the center sat Victoria, poised and still, allowing herself to be styled and perfected, her expression distant as ever. I began photographing the details. The gown hanging in the window, jewelry arranged on velvet, the bouquet of white roses and baby's breath. But through my lens, I kept returning to Victoria's face. She didn't look nervous, excited, or radiant. She looked resigned, as if playing a part assigned to her. "Victoria, darling, you need to smile," one bridesmaid urged, her polished appearance straight out of a country club magazine. Victoria's smile appeared instantly, radiant, flawless, and entirely hollow. I captured the image, though the emptiness behind it left me unsettled. "Let's get some shots with your father," I suggested, knowing those moments often held deep emotion. Charles Reed entered with commanding presence, tall, silver-haired, impeccably dressed, exuding authority. "My beautiful daughter," he said, though his tone carried an unsettling edge. "Hello, father," Victoria replied, her body tensing as he approached. "Are you ready for your big day?" he asked, placing his hands on her shoulders. Through my lens, I saw his fingers press into her skin, and her subtle flinch at his touch. "Yes, father. Everything is exactly as you planned." "As we planned," he corrected, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "This is your day, Victoria. The day you become Mrs. Peter Russell and take your rightful place in society." I took several shots, but the dynamic was wrong. This wasn't a father sharing his daughter's joy. It was a man ensuring his arrangement was carried through. Needing a change of atmosphere, I excused myself to check on the groom. The groom's suite was the opposite of the bridal preparations. Laughter, relaxed banter, groomsmen treating the morning like a casual gathering. Peter himself seemed entirely comfortable, adjusting his tie while chatting about weekend golf plans. "Nervous?" I asked, as I photographed him. "Not at all," he replied, with a confident smile. "Victoria and I have known each other since childhood. This was always the plan." "The plan?" I asked. "Our families have been close for generations. It makes sense for us to marry. We share the same world, the same values. Our families approve. It sits really quite perfect." To him, this wedding wasn't about love. It was about alignment, approval, and legacy. A merger dressed up as a marriage. While photographing the groomsmen, I met Logan Russell, Peter's younger brother. Where Peter was conventionally attractive and assured, Logan was more understated, thoughtful eyes, an easy smile, and a warmth his older brother seemed to lack. "You must be the photographer," Logan said as he approached, taking advantage of a moment when the others were distracted. I stummed Logan, the spare heir. "Ross Bailey," I replied. "Good to meet you." He tilted his head. "Have you met Victoria yet?" "I have," I said. "She seems lovely." Logan grew quiet, studying my face. "She is lovely. She sits also the kindest and most intelligent person I know. I just hope," he stopped himself. "Forget it. It sits not my place." Still, the unease in his voice stayed with me as I moved between the bridal and groom's preparations, capturing the usual pre-ceremony moments. Something about this polished event felt undeniably wrong. It was during the formal family portraits that I took the photograph that would change everything. The posed images were exactly what one would expect, rigid groupings of two powerful families standing side by side. Charles Reed held himself with military precision, his wife composed but distant. The Russell family was equally stiff, arranged by social rank and importance. But during a pause between poses, I caught something unexpected. Logan approached Victoria, who stood slightly apart from the group, looking weary from the orchestrated display. He said something I couldn't hear, but I saw her face transform. She laughed, genuinely and freely, her eyes lighting up in a way I hadn't seen all day. In that instant she looked like an entirely different woman. I instinctively raised my camera and captured it. Victoria mid-laugh, her hand resting on Logan's arm, both of them sharing a moment of warmth and familiarity that had been absent in her interactions with Peter. It lasted only seconds before Charles Reed's commanding voice cut through. Victoria, we're ready for the next shot. The light in her eyes disappeared instantly. The mask returned and she resumed her position. But I had seen the truth and captured it. As the ceremony approached, I faced a dilemma. I was hired to document this wedding, to record what would become the official account of the day, but I also held proof that the bride was deeply unhappy, perhaps being forced into a marriage she didn't want. Guests began arriving at the garden venue, hundreds of white chairs lined in perfect rows, an altar adorned with thousands of flowers, and a string quartet filling the air with classical music. Everything was flawless, expensive, and carefully arranged. I checked my equipment one last time as I prepared for the processional. In half an hour, Victoria would walk down the aisle to become Mrs. Peter Russell, and I was expected to capture every moment. Yet my mind returned to that one photograph, the only glimpse of genuine happiness I'd seen all day. I made a choice that went against every professional instinct. I found Victoria in the bridal suite, alone for the first time. Her bridesmaids had already taken their places, leaving her in front of a full-length mirror, staring at her reflection with quiet sorrow. "Victoria," I said softly. Not wanting to alarm her, she turned, her eyes flashing with panic. "Is it time? Are they waiting for me?" "Not yet. You still have a few minutes." I hesitated, aware that what I was about to do could end my career. "I want to show you something." I pulled up the photo of her laughing with Logan on my camera screen. She caught her breath when she saw it. "Why are you showing me this?" she whispered. "Because out of hundreds of images today, this is the only one where you look truly happy." Tears welled in her eyes. "You don't still understand. This wedding isn't sect about my happiness. It's sex about obligations, business, expectations set long before I had a choice." "But what about what you want, Victoria? Not your father, not society, not anyone else. What do you want?" She stared at the screen, her expression shifting. It was subtle, but I recognized it. It was the same openness I sipped captured in the photo. "I want to feel like this," she said softly, touching the image. "To laugh like this, to be myself without apology, to choose my own path." "Then why don't set you?" I asked. "Because I can set. This is bigger than me. Walking away now would ruin everything. Or," I said quietly, "it could save you." She looked at me in surprise, as if the idea had never occurred to her. "Victoria," I continued, "I've photographed more than 300 weddings. I've seen genuine love, nervous excitement, and marriages of convenience. But I've never seen a bride who looked like she was walking to her own execution." "That's exactly what it feels like," she whispered. "Then don't do it." "I can just disappear. There are 300 guests waiting." "Then walk down the aisle," I said firmly. "But when the minister asks if you take Peter as your husband, tell the truth." She stared at me as though I suggested the impossible. "I can it. The scandal, the shame, would be temporary," I said. "But marrying someone you don't love, living a life that isn't yours, that's permanent." A knock on the door interrupted us. "Victoria, her father Sip's voice called. It's Sip's time. She looked from me to the photograph, one last time. Something in her eyes shifted, not resignation, but resolve. Thank you, she whispered. The processional began on schedule. Bridesmaids walked in perfect formation, followed by the flower girl and ring bearer. The quartet played the wedding march as 300 guests rose to their feet. Victoria appeared at the back of the aisle, her arm linked with her father's. To everyone else, she looked like the perfect society bride. But through my telephoto lens, I saw something different: determination. Her steps were measured, steady. Charles Reed smiled proudly, acknowledging important guests as they passed. Peter waited at the altar, calm and assured. When they reached the front, Charles lifted her veil and kissed her cheek. I'm proud of you, he whispered, loud enough for my microphone to catch. I know, Father, Victoria replied, but I step about to make my own choices now. Confused, he stepped back as she joined Peter. The minister began the ceremony with the familiar words, Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to witness the union of Victoria Reed and Peter Russell in holy matrimony. I continued shooting, though my heart pounded. I didn't know what Victoria would do, but I could see the tension in her posture, the tremor in her hands. The readings and exchange of rings passed without incident. Peter's vows were polished, speaking of partnership, shared values, and family legacy. Victoria's words focused on duty and commitment, elegant but empty. And then came the decisive moment. Peter, the minister said, do you take Victoria to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold, in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, for better or worse, until death do you part? I do, Peter replied confidently. The minister turned. Victoria, do you take Peter to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, for better or worse, until death do you part? The silence lingered longer than anyone expected. Victoria glanced at Peter, then at her father seated in the front row, and finally at the hundreds of faces fixed on her. Her eyes found Logan among the groomsmen, and whatever she saw there gave her strength. No, she said firmly. I don't set. The audible gasp from nearly 300 guests even rose above the click of my camera shutter. Peter's face drained of color. Victoria, what are you doing? He whispered. But her voice was no longer a whisper. I twine telling the truth, she declared, turning toward the audience. The truth I should have spoken months, even years ago. This wedding isn't set about love. It's set about business, family obligations, and protecting financial partnerships. Charles Reed shot to his feet, his face red with fury. Victoria, stop this at once. No, Father, I won't set. Her voice grew steadier with every word. I won't set live a lie anymore. My whole life has been about being the perfect daughter, following the perfect plan, preparing for the perfect marriage. But nothing is perfect if it isn't set. My choice. She turned back to Peter, regret clear in her eyes. You stir, a good man, Peter, and you deserve someone who truly loves you. But that person isn't set me. We both know this was arranged, and we both know it sets convenience, not love. Victoria, please, Peter said, though his voice carried both embarrassment and relief. We can talk about this privately. No, she replied, pulling the ring from her finger and placing it in his hand. No more private negotiations. No more planning my life in boardrooms and country clubs. I step sorry for the embarrassment, the cost, the disruption, but I am not sorry for choosing my own life. The garden erupted. Guests whispered and argued. Charles Reed forced his way through the crowd, intent on pulling his daughter away. Mrs. Reed fainted, surrounded by frantic society women. Still, Victoria continued. I know this is shocking. I know it's not what anyone expected. But choosing happiness isn't selfish, it's necessary. She looked at Logan, smiling in a way that radiated freedom. And when I do marry someday, it will be to someone who makes me laugh, who sees me for who I truly am, and who loves me for myself, not for what I represent. With that, she lifted her dress and walked down the aisle, not as a bride heading into marriage, but as a woman reclaiming her freedom. The aftermath was exactly what one would expect from such a scandal. Charles Reed threatened lawsuits and ruin. The Russell family tried to mask their humiliation. Guests scattered or clustered to gossip about what they had just witnessed. I kept photographing, knowing these images would tell a story no wedding album had ever told. As Victoria reached the back of the garden, Logan stepped away from the groomsmen and hurried to her side. Concern, and something more was clear in his face. "Victoria," he called. She turned, her face lighting with that same radiant smile. "Are you all right?" he asked. "I set 'm better than all right. I set 'm free. And now, for the first time in my life, I don't set no. I have no plan, no obligations, no set path. It sets terrifying and wonderful, all at once." Logan reached for her hand. "Would you like some company while you figure it out? Are you sure? Your family will never forgive you for choosing me over them. That sep's the only thing I set am sure of." I caught that moment too. Victoria and Logan, hand in hand, looking at one another with a love I'd rarely captured in 8 years of photographing weddings. It was unguarded, genuine, real. As they walked away from the chaos, I realized I hadn't documented a ruined wedding. I had witnessed a woman choosing her own path and discovering true love in the process. The scandal filled society pages for months. Charles Reed disowned Victoria publicly, though I later heard he softened when he realized her happiness mattered more than business ties. The Reed-Russell merger collapsed, but both families survived. Surprisingly, Peter wasn't devastated. Within 6 months, he was happily dating someone who truly shared his life and values. As for me, I feared my career in high-society wedding photography was finished. Who would hire the photographer who let a bride run? But instead, word spread, and I began hearing from couples who wanted authenticity captured, not appearances staged. My career grew stronger than before. A year later, I received a call. "Ross, it sets Victoria." Well, soon to be Victoria Russell, but not in the way anyone imagined. "Logan and I are getting married next month, and we set love for you to photograph our wedding." I said be honored. It'd still be small, maybe 50 people in Logan Sip's backyard. Simple, but real this time. Those are the best weddings. And it was. The ceremony was intimate, joyful, and unpretentious. Victoria wore a simple, off-the-rack dress. Logan wore a suit he already owned. Their vows were their own. The photographs from that day were some of the most beautiful I've ever taken. Not because of extravagance, but because they captured something money cannot buy. 2 people choosing each other without hesitation. My favorite image shows Victoria mid-laugh, her head thrown back, while Logan gazes at her with pure wonder. That same happiness I saw in her the day she walked away from the altar, now framed on my office wall. A reminder that photography is not just about documenting moments, but about revealing truth. Victoria and Logan have now been married 3 years, living quietly and happily, far from society's spotlight. Their joy has nothing to do with wealth or approval, only with the life they chose together. Every anniversary, they send me a photo, not staged, not professional, just a snapshot of them laughing, still choosing one another, still free. A powerful story of courage, truth, and love over obligation. What do you think of Ross showing Victoria that photograph before her wedding? Share your thoughts in the comments. If this story moved you, please like, subscribe, and click the bell so you never miss more stories that celebrate authentic human connection. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.